The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the cracked asphalt of Ashford, a small town in Middle America where nothing much ever seemed to change. The gas station on the corner bustled with the ordinary hum of life, doors of the convenience store swinging open and shut, tires crunching over gravel, country music humming faintly from a truck parked by the curb. But on the sidewalk, near the yellow painted line that divided the lot from the street, sat two figures who didn't belong to this rhythm of ordinary life. 9-year-old Lila Carter clutched her baby brother, Sammy, to her, tightly in her arms. Sammy was only 6 months old, his tiny face flushed red with hunger. He whimpered weakly, lips rooting against the dirty scrap of cloth that covered him. Lila's own face was smeared with dust, her blue cotton dress torn at the hem. Her braids had long since unraveled, strands of hair plastered to her cheeks with sweat and tears. She had walked miles that day. Her bare feet ached, her knees shook, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Because Sammy's cries were getting weaker, and every time his tiny chest heaved, she feared it might be the last. "Shish, Sammy," she whispered, rocking him gently. "I'll find you milk. I promise." Her eyes darted toward the people moving around the lot. A group of farmers in dusty overalls leaned against their truck, sipping from soda cans. A man in a crisp white suit stepped out of the convenience store, carrying a black plastic bag, his shoes clicking sharply against the pavement. A woman in a perfectly pressed navy blue uniform locked her shiny black car, her hair tied in a neat bun. Lila's heart thudded. She had learned, in her short life, that some people ignored, some mocked, and a rare few listened. She prayed this woman would be one of the rare ones. Gathering courage, she staggered to her knees, holding Sammy out slightly as though presenting undeniable proof of her desperation. Her small voice cracked as she called, "Please, Auntie, baby needs milk." The woman froze, startled. Her sharp eyes fell on Lila, then on the bundle in her arms. She crouched slightly, but her face showed more irritation than compassion. "Where are your parents?" the woman demanded, her tone firm, as though she were scolding an unruly child rather than addressing a desperate plea. Lila swallowed hard. Her throat was dry, lips cracked. They're gone." The woman frowned. "Gone where? You shouldn't be out here like this. Go home." I don't have a home," Lila whispered, tears blurring her vision. She tightened her arms around Sammy, whose weak cry escaped into the air like a fading song. The farmers in the background chuckled nervously, pretending not to notice. The man in the white suit had paused at the store's entrance, watching, but made no move to intervene. A few passers-by slowed, glanced, and then looked away, as if the sight of two ragged children might cling to them like a stain. "Please," Lila tried again, her voice breaking. "Just milk. He's hungry. He's all I've got." The woman exhaled sharply, straightening. "This isn't safe. You can't be sitting here asking strangers for things. Someone should call the police." The word stabbed Lila like a knife. Police meant questions. Police meant being taken away. She had promised Mama, on that last night, that she would never let Sammy be taken. Her mind flashed back to the flickering candle in their trailer, her mother's pale face illuminated in its glow. "You're strong, Lila," Mama had whispered, coughing into her blanket. "Stronger than me. You look after Sammy, no matter what. Promise me." Lila had nodded, tears burning her eyes. "I promise." The next morning, Mama was gone. Lila blinked hard, shoving the memory away. She couldn't cry now. Not in front of these people. But Sammy whimpered again, and that sound shattered her walls. "Please," she sobbed, looking at the woman with wide, pleading eyes. "I'll do anything. Just a little milk. Please." For a moment, the woman's hard expression softened. But before she could respond, the man in the white suit stepped forward, his polished shoes gleaming. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice smooth but edged with authority. His gaze flicked from Lila to the woman, then back again. "She's begging," the woman said flatly. "A child with a baby. Says she doesn't have parents." The man's brow furrowed. He crouched slightly, though still keeping a careful distance. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Lila's chest tightened. She didn't want to answer. Mama had warned her never to trust men with shiny shoes and smooth voices. But something about his tone wasn't unkind. Lila," she stammered. "And the baby, Sammy. He's my brother." The man nodded slowly, as if weighing his options. Around them, the farmers had grown quiet, their earlier amusement replaced by unease. People passing by were whispering now, some pulling out phones, recording. Lila hated that. Hated the way they looked at her as if she were some scene in a movie instead of a real girl with a real, starving baby in her arms. The man in the suit stood. "This child needs help," he said firmly. "If none of you are going to step up, then I will." He turned back toward the store, disappearing inside. The woman in uniform exhaled sharply and muttered, "Unbelievable." She adjusted her shirt, as if brushing away invisible dust, and walked toward her car. But before getting in, she glanced once more at Lila. Their eyes met, and for a flicker of a second, guilt passed over her face. Lila didn't notice. She was too focused on rocking Sammy, whispering soothing words even as her own stomach cramped from hunger. A few minutes later, the man in the suit returned, carrying a small carton of baby formula and a bottle of water. He crouched, opening the container with surprising clumsiness for someone so polished. He mixed the powder with water, shaking the bottle, then held it out to Lila. Her hands trembled as she took it. Sammy's tiny lips latched eagerly onto the nipple, and for the first time in hours, the sound of sucking filled the air instead of cries. Tears streamed down Lila's cheeks, but this time they were tears of relief. "Thank you," she whispered. The man studied her closely. "Where's your family, Lila? Where are you staying?" She shook her head quickly. "We're fine. We just needed milk." "You're not fine," he said gently. "You can't take care of him out here all alone." Fear surged in her chest. She clutched Sammy tighter, edging back. "I can. I promised Mama." The man hesitated. Something unreadable flickered across his face. "I see." Behind him, the farmers exchanged glances. One finally spoke, his voice gruff. "Kid, you can't be living on the street with a baby. You'll both get hurt." But Lila had already shut them out. She rocked Sammy, watching his tiny eyelids flutter shut in contentment, his breathing evening out. For now, he was safe. That was all that mattered. Yet deep down, she knew the man was right. She couldn't keep doing this forever. The streets were dangerous. Food was scarce. Winter was coming. But what choice did she have? She lifted her chin, determination burning through the exhaustion. "We'll be okay," she murmured to herself, more than to anyone else. "We have to be." And as the neon lights of the gas station flickered on above her, casting long shadows across the lot, Lila knew that her journey, and Sammy's, was only just beginning. The rain had stopped in Ashford, leaving behind streets that smelled of wet asphalt and coffee drifting from corner cafes. The small town looked quiet, but for Layla Carter and her little brother Sammy, life had just begun to stir in ways they never imagined. Weeks had passed since the court had given Margaret, the kind-hearted diner owner, guardianship of the two children. For the first time in months, Layla slept without fear that someone might take Sammy away. The old creaking guest room in Margaret's house had turned into their sanctuary. The walls were decorated with framed photographs of Margaret's late husband and her grown-up children, but now they also carried the sound of a baby's giggle and the determined footsteps of a young girl learning to be strong. At night, as Layla tucked Sammy into bed, she often thought of her mother's last words, "Promise me you'll take care of him." Those words didn't feel like a burden anymore. They had become her anchor. A new routine. Every morning began with the same ritual. Layla would help Margaret open the diner. The bells on the door jingled as the first customers entered, truck drivers needing coffee before long journeys, office workers in crisp suits grabbing bagels, and old men who gathered at the same corner booth to discuss politics and baseball. Layla loved watching the town wake up. She wiped tables, refilled water glasses, and sometimes even took small orders when Margaret was busy. The regulars knew her now. Some of them slipped her $1 as a tip, even when Margaret insisted it wasn't necessary. Sammy, meanwhile, became the heart of the diner. Margaret had set up a small playpen in the back, filled with toys she had saved from her grandchildren. Customers often peeked over and made silly faces, and Sammy responded with endless laughter. For Layla, every giggle was proof that they were healing. Shadows of the past. But healing didn't mean forgetting. Some nights, when the diner was closed and the town lay silent, Layla would wake up sweating. In her dreams, she saw flashing police lights, strangers pulling Sammy away, or her mother's pale face fading in the hospital bed. Margaret noticed. One evening, she found Layla sitting on the porch steps, staring at the moon. "You don't have to carry it all alone, honey," Margaret said softly, wrapping a shawl around the girl's shoulders. Layla swallowed hard. What if one day someone comes again? What if they say I'm not good enough to stay with Sammy? Margaret's eyes glistened. Then we'll fight it together. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes, it's about who chooses to stand beside you. Layla leaned into her, feeling warmth she hadn't felt since her mother's embrace. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was beginning to live. The storm returns. The peace, however, wasn't permanent. One afternoon, as Layla was serving pie to a customer, the diner door opened and two men in suits walked in. They weren't locals, their polished shoes and stiff expressions made that clear. "Excuse me," one of them said, approaching Margaret. "We're from the county welfare office. We'd like to review the guardianship arrangement of the Carter children." Layla froze. Her heart pounded as she clutched the tray in her hands. Sammy was in the back, laughing as he stacked toy blocks. Margaret kept her composure. "We already went through this. The court granted me custody. What more do you need?" The man flipped open a file. "Routine checks. We need to ensure the children's well-being. It won't take long." Layla's throat went dry. She felt as if history was repeating itself, strangers, paperwork, questions, and the looming fear of separation. She wanted to scream, "You can't take him." But her voice was trapped. Margaret placed a firm hand on Layla's shoulder. "Don't worry, honey. They're not taking you anywhere." But deep down, Layla knew battles weren't always fought in courtrooms. Sometimes, they were fought in the quiet strength of a promise kept. The men from the welfare office sat at one of the diner's tables, their briefcases clicking open like weapons of bureaucracy. Papers spread across the formica surface, stark against the smell of fresh pie and fried bacon. Layla stood frozen behind the counter, her hands trembling as she gripped the tray. Margaret leaned down to whisper, "Go check on Sammy, sweetheart. Keep him close." Layla obeyed, but her heart raced. Sammy sat in his playpen, happily gnawing on a plastic block. She crouched beside him, smoothing his hair. He looked up and giggled, oblivious to the storm brewing just outside the kitchen door. The questions. The men asked questions in clipped, rehearsed tones. How many hours a day is the child supervised? What are the sources of household income? Are there medical records for the younger one? Margaret answered each with steady confidence. She spoke of her years running the diner, her steady finances, her grown children who visited often. But the more she spoke, the more Layla worried. What if they found something lacking? What if they decided love wasn't enough? Finally, one man turned his gaze toward Layla. "And the girl, does she attend school regularly?" Layla's stomach twisted. She hadn't stepped inside a classroom since before her mother died. Books and pencils seemed like relics from another life. She lowered her eyes, fighting tears. Margaret jumped in quickly. "I've already spoken with the elementary principal. Layla will be enrolled next semester. For now, she's been helping me here and caring for her brother." The man jotted something in his notes, his pen scratching like a blade. Breaking point. When the men finally left, promising a follow-up inspection, Layla collapsed into a chair. Her hands shook as if she had run miles. I thought they were going to take him," she whispered. Margaret knelt beside her. "Not while I'm breathing, honey." But that night, Layla lay awake. Sammy stirred beside her, his tiny fists clutching the blanket. Layla whispered into the darkness, "I promised, Mama. I won't lose him. Not now, not ever." Her vow echoed in the quiet house, fiercer than ever before. School and struggle. True to Margaret's word, Layla was enrolled in school the following semester. On her first day, she stood outside the brick building with her heart pounding. Children her age laughed, swapped trading cards, and ran across the playground. To them, school was routine. To Layla, it felt like another test she wasn't sure she could pass. Inside, she sat in a classroom filled with posters of presidents, maps of the United States, and motivational quotes about chasing dreams. The teacher, Mrs. Donovan, smiled warmly, but Layla could feel the weight of curious stares from classmates. "She's the girl from the diner," they whispered. At lunch, while others gathered in noisy groups, Layla sat alone. She missed Sammy. She worried if he was okay at Margaret's. And she wondered if she even belonged in this world of lockers, pencils, and math quizzes. That evening, she confessed to Margaret. I don't fit in. They look at me like I'm broken. Margaret cupped her chin gently. Sweetheart, you're not broken. You've just walked a harder road than they can imagine. One day, that road will make you stronger than all of them. Dash dash dash. A flicker of belonging. Weeks passed. Slowly, things began to change. A girl named Hannah, with curly red hair and freckles, sat beside Layla in class one day. You're the one who helps at the diner, right? Hannah asked. Layla nodded, cautious. My dad says your pies are better than any place in town. Hannah grinned. Can we be friends? For the first time in a long while, Layla smiled back. That small connection sparked something. She started answering more in class, joining group projects, even laughing at recess. Each evening, she'd return home to Sammy's arms and Margaret's warm dinners. It wasn't easy, but it was life, a real one, stitched together from second chances. Dash dash dash. Trouble returns. Just when hope seemed steady, another letter arrived. This time, from the county office itself. Margaret unfolded it at the kitchen table, her face tightening with every line. What does it say? Layla asked, her voice trembling. Margaret set the paper down slowly. They're scheduling a full hearing next month. They want to review whether it's best for you and Sammy to remain here, or be placed in foster care. The words hit like a hammer. Layla's chest ached, her breath shallow. She grabbed Sammy, clutching him close. No, she whispered fiercely. They can't take him, I promised. Margaret's eyes welled with tears, but her voice was firm. Then we'll fight, Layla. We'll fight with everything we've got.